Hello, this is Nitin Dahad with the Times, and I'm here at the Flexciton booth at Critical Manufacturing MES and Industry 4.0 conference in Porto, in Portugal, and talking to Jmaie Potter and Dennis Xenos, who are the co-founders of the company. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Let's start with a little bit about some of the topics that were raised at this conference around automation and Industry 4.0. And the basis of all of this is the manufacturing execution system, which is basically what they're talking about. What were the key points, I think, relevant to what you're doing in the semiconductor industry that you thought were quite important?
I think that's a really, really great question. I'm thinking mainly about Francisco's keynote here with the AI bringing MES a brain. I think if I was going to say, how do I see people interact with MES today in semiconductors? Everything's still actually really quite manual. There's a huge amount of people time, whether it's engineers or people who are not skilled at SQL and whatever, they're actually manually working with the MES. And I think what Francisco hinted at is really the future of how we can use the AI models that we're coming up with now to automate a lot of those tasks, to be able to query the MES, to get the data out and actually take actions and insights, which currently is a huge amount of manual work and very painful work, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, as media, as journalists, we get invited to most of the most advanced fabs. Like I've been to Global Foundries in Dresden, ST Microelectronics, and you think, okay, there's automation there, so what are they talking about? But then, actually, the reality is very different, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there is a huge amount of automation, but still look at the number of people that these companies employ.
I'll sort of rephrase that. The reality is different in the wider industry and also the wider semiconductor industry.
Right. I mean, someone like Global Foundries, you mentioned, is 300 millimeter, and you can think they're fully automated, which, okay, if you walk on the factory floor, you would typically see something like that, but there's still hundreds or even 1,000 people sat next to that factory doing a lot of a lot of manual work and manual decisions. And as soon as you go out to the 200 millimeter space, the vast majority of actions on the factory floor themselves are still completely manual.
Interesting. And what's Flexiton's value proposition? I don't know if you or Dennis want to answer that. Yeah, what are the things that you're doing in the industry?
Yeah, I think as we discussed before, I think the biggest value proposition we have is that our solution is fully autonomous. Flexciton is a product suite that we focus on the advanced planning and scheduling that for the wider market can understand the terminology. But what we do exactly is we collect the data from the factory, we make some smart computations, and then we give back to the factory different instructions how to run the operations. So we are, let's say, the intelligence on top of the MES of a manufacturing facility. So Flexciton provides planning and scheduling solutions.
And I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but so some of your customers are like Renesas and Seagate and Western Digital, and what are they doing in their fabs that are using Flexciton?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what we help them is to run the production and the scheduling of these factories. So these factories, they have the challenges of manufacture advanced chips, and it can take from 3 months to 9 months to complete the product.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated how to essentially decide which tool to run, which sequence, what products to sequence first and second. So we provide them a real-time schedule that this goes into their systems, and the operators essentially follow our instructions. I don't know if you want to add anything more on that.
I think it's really just all about what should happen and when, right? So we are orchestrating all the different tasks of when should you do maintenance on a machine, when should you load this wafer onto this machine, and just orchestrating all those tasks. How exactly the tasks are done, that's somebody else's business to decide, but when and how, in order to meet the factory's objectives, that's where we come in.
And I think the one sort of statement I got from some of the keynotes this morning was around static versus dynamic data, and I think what you're doing is enabling that dynamism of that whatever the data is coming in to act on it as and when it happens. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. So, a factory, especially in semiconductor, is an incredibly dynamic environment. And so we actually are constantly recalculating. So every 5 minutes, our software will typically refresh, evaluate the latest data from the MES, and decide, actually, how should we correct some of the actions we previously said for you to do, given the latest information that we've got. So it's an extremely dynamic situation.
And I think, I'm not sure if it's the customers I named, but you did say that some customers before you started working with them were sort of doing it per shift as opposed to doing it dynamically in terms of data upload or data download.
Yeah. So usually in manufacturing environments, the less advanced, they calculate the schedules every 12 hours. Obviously, these are the lowest advanced factories, and where obviously things change within, actually in semiconductor environment, within minutes. So obviously after 12 hours things have changed so much, where in our solution every 30 seconds in some cases we do recalculations because machines go down, products are late, and operators, they have to, there's uncertainty around the labor and the humans. So I think this is the big difference, what we observe in
And your customers are mostly currently in the UK, but you've got in the US. For example, Renesas, you're both in the UK and the US with them. Is that right?
Yes, our main market is in Europe. We have in UK. We have also in Europe as well, but also US, and we start also exploring in Asia. In Singapore, we do some first pilots.
Okay, and what are the big trends you're seeing with your customers right now? What are the big challenges?
One of the main things I would say is skilled labor shortage. It's a huge problem. So in our respect, traditional software you'd use for planning and scheduling is very people intensive, requires a lot of tacit knowledge, whereas that's the point of what we're trying to do with the autonomous solutions, is that this can figure out automatically how to run the factory for you. But I think that's where I see a big application of lots of the AI tools also Francisco was talking about. There's just such a huge growing shortage of people that we need more automation and we need more AI tools to be able to replace some of the tasks that people did. I'd also say, automation in general, everybody wants to automate the shop floor. And I think there's actually what we're going to see over the next 5 years probably is a lot of legacy factories that were built for people will try to become fully automated. It was actually a huge challenge. So in a 200 millimeter fab, for example, which was built for people, actually how do you retrofit that with robotics that can actually automatically move things around the factory floor? How do you make up for the fact you no longer have people making decisions? Yeah. These are the key kind of challenges and megatrends that I see people working on today. Interesting.
And your background, both of you came together, 2016 to start this? Is that right?
That's right.
What was the basis of starting this company? What was the thing that triggered you?
Sure. So we're both engineers, right? So I was a mathematician. Dennis was a mechanical engineer and a chemical engineer. And I'd actually been working in industry in a slightly different segment, creating planning solutions using the kind of traditional technology. Dennis had been doing some academic research on a new approach to solving planning and scheduling solutions. And we met and we thought, okay, the status quo, there's a lot that can be done to improve that. And so we set off with an idea of a new technology to commercialize. And ultimately we found our way into semiconductors because what we realized was just the maturity of that industry from a data systems point of view, MES, etc., is so much higher than other industries that it made sense they're ready to adopt smart AI kind of based solutions like what we provide. And also, to be honest, the complexity is just so high. So in electronics, back-end semiconductor, front-end semiconductor, the complexity there is so high that actually traditional solutions didn't work very well at all. And that's, why we founded the business and why we are where we are.
And you've raised $30 million, I think, so far. I don't know how many people, but what's next for you?
Sure. So, we've raised about £22 million. We've got about 35 employees in our team. We were very much a deep tech R&D focused company for many years, but over the last few years that's really shifted. We're very much a real industry player that's really focused on commercialization and growth. of our customer base, but also we're actively looking at now how can we broaden out our product suite much more to create really the autonomous brain of the factory. As I said, even at somewhere like Global Foundries, there'll be 1,000 people maybe working at that factory, all thinking about how should that factory operate and run.
Yeah.
And actually, that's the autonomous brain that we aim to really enable, is so that we don't need quite as many of those skilled people in the future to be making those decisions.
But you still need humans in the loop, I guess.
Certainly, and certainly for a long time.
So AI agents won't take over.
Not for a while, no.
But they'll do some of the tasks that help that human.
Talking to someone recently, a fab manager, about their talent strategy, they basically see it that whilst they have all these people today, they actually expect attrition and they expect to not necessarily be able to replace, and they're working on the premise of having a reduced workforce in the future. And as a result, AI tools and this kind of autonomous decision making is a key part of that kind of strategy.
Yeah.
Because we want to, it's not like we're going to remove people, but we want to be able to do a lot more, but with less people than we had before.
Well, Jmaie and Dennis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.